I'm Eamon.
I'm Merlin.
And we're Gay
and His Enby.
It is episode 6 here, another episode of A Gay and His Enby.
We are so excited to get to it today, but before we get started, I want to do a quick shout out to Mr. Frank Catania Sr.
I literally, when Frank Catania had liked our post on our Instagram, by the way, follow us on all our social media on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, etc. We post clips from the podcast every week, and he liked our post. You particularly praising his
physical
fuckability.
Prowess.
well, that's a nice way to put it. His fuckability.
Yeah, well, yes, but his fuckability is based on his physical prowess.
Yeah, literally, I got the notification for that and had to call Merlin at work and just like fan over that. But
so, I mean, it wasn't even just that he liked it, but he shared the tweet in his Instagram or not tweet, but he shared the reel in his Instagram story. So, like, I'm just over the moon about it. We love you, Frank.
Yes.
You are my most fuckable New Jersey house husband.
But yes, thank you, Frank, and thank you for everyone listening to us here on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to us here for A Gay and His Enby. What do we have packed in for this week's show this week, Merlin?
So we have a little bit less this week because Potomac was taking its week off, right, for that soup spoon thing. Oh, the Rihanna concert. That's right. Also, congratulations to Rihanna on a second pregnancy. Absolutely killing it and up there doing all that dancing and all that performing with a baby in your belly. Absolutely stunning.
I mean, beyond the fact that we won't get into it too much, but like the dialogue online I was seeing from people being like, oh, well, she was marking choreo. Oh, it's like one, beyond the fact that she was pregnant.
She was dancing for two, motherfuckers.
But also, like, I don't know if many people have seen a Rihanna performance. She's not known for like intense choreo.
She's not Beyonce. She's a different style of performer. She doesn't do like the sharp hits. She does like the chill, laid back dancing. And like that was evident in everything that her dancers were doing. That's evident in her music. So like if you thought you were going to get out there and get like a drill team type performance, she's not the one.
No, but it was a great performance, and I enjoyed the soup spoon, as we called it, as a whole. I kind of embraced my inner straight person the whole night that I think you were very confused by.
Yeah, well,
I know enough of sports to get some.
Look, I was raised in front of Sunday football, so I get it. I avoided it as much as possible, but like you throw the ball, people chase it, and like either people scream in agony or people scream in happiness.
That's a good way to put it.
It's the whole game.
But no, what do we have on tap this week?
All right, so we have this second episode of Real Housewives of New Jersey. We also have the 14th episode of Real Housewives of Miami for this season. We've got episode 2 of Vanderpump Rules. But first, as always, Drag Race.
We have a lot to say about this episode of Drag Race, by the way.
We have a lot to say about every episode of Drag Race, to be clear.
Well, I think we're going to be very a little more pessimistic this episode in terms of one particular part of this episode, but we'll get to it. So they're coming back in from the workroom as Robin Fierce went home last week. And then we get back into the sort of scrapping between Mistress Isabel Brooks and Malaysia Baby Doll Fox, which we didn't really get Mistress kind of got word to her of like sort of what happened in Untucked when she was still on the main stage and basically brought this up to Malaysia. I think you and I are kind of both in an agreement of like, we're kind of on Mistress's side in this, at least in terms of this episode and this section of the disputes.
Yes. I think at this point, Malaysia is in her feels unnecessarily, and she just needs to let it go.
Yeah, I just think like, and Mistress's point was just like, I have no problem like saying like if I upset you unintentionally or unintentionally, like I have no problem apologizing for it, and like, but like I need to know that, and it can't be like this like passive aggressive like sort of
right. Like, do I think Mistress overstepped in her humor and the way that she was interacting with Malaysia? Yes. do I think that Malaysia should have then communicated that oversteppage, the oversteppation of the humoration, to
Okay, Wendy.
How you doing? So do I think she should have communicated that to Mistress? Yes. And at that point is where it breaks down, because Malaysia's allowed to be upset, but she's not allowed to hold Mistress accountable when Mistress has no way to know that she's overstepped.
Sure. And Mistress does offer an apology, and kind of Malaysia is very, like you said, in her feelings and not responding. And well, and then Mistress kind of like chuckles from getting no response, and Malaysia goes, "It's not funny."
Oh no, it was funny at that point.
Which I was like, okay, this is okay. And then also her, well, we don't see it directly, but like her and Sasha Colby, Mistress and Sasha Colby, Sasha tries to sort of like speak for Malaysia in that regard, and Mistress in her confessional being like, I don't need you to be the mother and figure and like say, like, give us a lesson like you're Dumbledore.
Which, okay, to be clear, okay, Sasha Colby is mother.
If there is anyone that is mother, it is Sasha Colby. Period. But no, I mean, you know, I think that's more just like general, like, tiff, you know, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems that it kind of subsides at least by the end of the episode, which is good. I don't think it'll dwell for too long. But we go back to the workroom the next day, and we get the challenge for this week, which is the acting challenge. They are redoing the Daytona wins from last season, but this time, instead of it being sort of like the like telenovela style you know, vibe that they had last year, they're going with a more sitcom style, which
that was a choice.
Well, it was a choice if that's what they gave us, but we'll get to that. And
part of me feels like I can't even criticize that, because how much of that was cut and thrown onto the cutting room floor because MTV is doing all this fuckery with the episode.
Well, no, I don't think that was the case this time around. As much as like, yes, it was the, you know, I would have always loved a 90-minute episode, and it would have given more context. There was nothing more time could do to fix the choice that they made with this challenge, because like,
yeah, but some of it was good. I thought there were pieces of this that were funny, that but a lot of it they just hung on to too long.
Well, yeah,
and it was excruciating.
Well, and we'll get to why. Like, I think it was really good in the rehearsal. Like in the rehearsal, the little bits that we saw, I thought I thought was great, and I would have loved.
For once, a challenge was written well.
Yeah, for the most part.
I mean, well, for Drag Race.
It wasn't over. Well, yes. Yes. In the basic writing of the challenge, as we would think it were to be, it wasn't overwritten as challenges usually are on Drag Race.
Right.
Like, but again,
it all came down to the edit. And the edit, I think, ruined some of the performances that were good on camera, and just ruined. They gilded their own lily.
RuPaul's Drag Race has fucked up drag, is what you're saying.
RuPaul's Drag Race has fucked up RuPaul's Drag Race.
There we go. Well, yeah, at least acting challenges. I'm like, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of these ever, really. But so Aura has to assign the parts for everyone because she won the challenge from last week. And Aura is, you know, she wants the main role originally, and she says immediately, I'm going to take it. And then they start sort of reading through things in the workroom. And she's basically like, I don't get any of these references, which are all like basic Drag Race references, which I think that was the main like consensus online, which is like, how are you going on a show where you don't know the references of the show?
Yeah, it's one thing to not know. I mean, say what you will about not knowing queer references with
Sure.
herstory and whatnot, but like, if you're going on to Drag Race, you at least need to know the Drag Race references.
And it's not like they don't beat them over the head with it every chance that they get. Like,
oh, yeah.
You know.
I mean, they reuse them so often that they've almost lost their original context, which is what really made them funny to begin with.
Right. And Mistress kind of played a good game here in terms of like seeing Aura struggling because she had originally wanted this part, and Mistress being like, "Hey, do you want to switch parts? Because I think you'll do better in this part if you don't like know the reference." And Aura's like, "Yeah, that makes perfect sense." But people were right to point out that like, but I mean,
it was sneaky, but I think she was also trying to rescue a sister.
But if you're also like gonna do tactics, like people talk about using tactics or whatever, that's a good actual like good tactic, I feel. Like to, I think it came off seamlessly in my view.
Yeah, like I said, was there a ulterior motive? Yeah, probably. But I think her first indication was, geez, she's struggling. Oh, she's got the part I wanted to begin with. Yeah, I'll offer to switch with her.
Yeah.
I think her first indication was to help. Because that's what I hear of her character outside of what we've seen on the show.
Right, yeah. So they go into rehearsal, or in the actual filming, I should say, of the piece. I will say this, and I think she did something last season in the same sort of challenge. I can't remember. Rue is actually really, really good at giving directions in an acting challenge and directing. Like I really hate when Michelle does it personally, because I think Michelle does the whole reality thing of just like, if someone messes up, they kind of give like the confused face and then just be like, okay, do it again. Okay, no, but without actually giving any guidance. Rue actually directs like a director would.
Yeah. It's she is to acting challenges what Ross is to the entire show. Useless and mainly frustrating.
Yeah, but like it's sometimes I think because it's like a competition or whatever, they don't want to do it. But I like that Rue will be like, no, do it, say it specifically like this, like, and like repeat it back to them, which you would do as a director, like that, like if they're not giving a certain thing, like act it out for them to where they can repeat it. It's not, but even so, I mean, it didn't even work that well for Spice. Was really struggling in this filming. At one point, Rue was just like, okay, but it needs to be more like sitcom style where there's like the pause and stuff like that. And Spice is like, oh, I get it. So you want me to go deeper in my voice? And it's like, no, she didn't say that. Like Spice wasn't like.
Sugar would have been the better twin in this.
Well, but I think we're gonna get to it later in the judging and possibly in future episodes, that it's starting to like the rehearsal of Spice and Sugar and Spice. Is what's in. They can't be in the moment and like live in the moment and sort of like, which I think is partly their age. I think it's partly their like the way they're kind of were brought up as twins. Like there's sort of like when you don't listen, like there,
Well, and we also we also have to talk about like the generational implications, right? Like when because I would assume that they are, how old are they?
At least in their like really early 20s.
Like 22, 23, something like that. I mean, that puts them into older Gen Z, like kind of in that Zennial transition time. So I can only assume that they were still coming up and had very much instilled into them the perfection is the only option mindset.
Sure. And they talked about in like talked a couple episodes ago about like, seemed like kind of a real strict upbringing in terms of their family. So I can see where it's like.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely battled some of that. Perfection is the only way to do things. Listen to everyone out there listening. Anything that is worth doing, the rest of that saying should not be is worth doing right. Anything worth doing is actually worth fucking up.
Sure.
Because it's better to take action and do something wrong than to never do anything at all.
Yeah. I agree. So we go to the runway. The runway for this week is Puffer Please, Puffer looks, Puffer jackets, Puffer sleeves, Puffer anything Puffer.
Yep. Definitely both a reference to Daytona winds and another word that we're not going to say on this podcast because we glow in the dark.
But also I'm just getting that, by the way, that the puffer is the wow.
Really?
Yeah, I'm just getting that it's a fart reference. My God.
Yeah, it's Daytona Winds, but it's also literally replacing the N-word.
Yeah, also, well, sure. Well, Rue loves that joke. Rue loves to make a insert thing, please joke. She loves that joke, and it is very uncomfortable sometimes. But we go down the runway. I thought this was an overall good runway. I thought some of them could have gone a little bit bolder in terms of like to me, I think Puffer, go like as huge as fucking possible. Like
I want to see a Macy's Day Parade blimp.
Like I want to see that Shangela. Remember that Shangela All Stars look where it like blew up on the runway and like sort of grew and it was like this like spiky. It was on that one season of All Stars, the one that she famously lost. But like, I thought it was kind of muted Puffer in a way. There were a lot of good designs though. I thought Sasha Colby never looks bad. Like, yeah, and that like black and yellow, like sort of like, different. It was a lot, but in a way that was still like gave such a look and such a like wow factor. I also thought Malaysia looked great. I think this is the best Malaysia's looked on the runway. This like lemonade style, like lemon print with like the little like purse that was the lemonade box. I thought it was really good as well. And I also really, really loved Anitra's like red and pink sort of like, I love a stripper look. And there's something about a stripper look that really gets me. She said that on her confessional, she said, "I'm representing the Nevada State Bird, which is a prostitute."
I really liked her look. I loved most of Mistress's look. I didn't think that the panty looked right. It looked more diapery on her, and I think it was just the cut of the garment. It was like bulging in places it should not have been. It was diapery.
I think that was the one difficulty with Puffer. Like you have to sort of like keep that balance. And I
mean, say what you will about the rest of her look, because I know you weren't happy about it, but I felt like Marsha had a more successful puffed panty.
Sure. It did not. Yeah, it didn't sag, I guess you could say. I think that was the biggest issue with Mistresses. Yeah. My thing with Marsha's look was just it seemed a little too simple.
I thought it was a good idea. After watching the fashion photo review with Raven and Raja, I can understand where they were coming from and why they ended up booting it. I still thought it was a successful look overall. Yeah. But that's just me.
Can we also talk about Selena's look? Selena's titties. I
love Selena. I hated this look.
So I didn't. You don't like when it's a jacket that doesn't have any kind of like reveal to it, or something like.
Why are you doing a jacket? Is not a look. A jacket is a jacket that goes over a look.
I'm of the opinion that a jacket could be a look. I think. I didn't mind the jacket. My bigger issue was the gag at the end. So she on the like puffer pieces of this is all like clear, so they have like little like trinkets and stuff like that in it. She had like Cheetos and like and she was like eating a bag of Cheetos on the way in because she was giving basically like this like sort of like
they're flaming hot Cheetos too. It's not just regular old Cheetos.
Yeah, but then she does she's like, oh, I got my gag where she flashes her panties, which are also in the see-through puffer thing, and she has 2 flaming hot Cheetos in there, and it did not look right.
To me, it looked like a bloody cat poo.
It looked like she had like a tapeworm, like a little like it was just the shape of it and like the how bright red it was. It was like this is, and maybe that was like the double entendre of what she was trying to do with the
maybe. Look. Either way, I didn't like it.
No.
But I love Selena. I am always going to be behind her, except not on this look.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are iffy on her, and which I've seen on social media, but I really like Selena in terms of like what she's bringing. I for the most part, I think she has a good understanding of things in general. Yeah. So we get to the challenge. What the fuck was this? What the actual? We were watching it in just like. Like so confused. I think the other thing is,
Stunned silence, I think, is the apt description.
I think you were talking about it earlier of just like we couldn't enjoy anyone because we were just confused as to what was happening. And I had originally thought they were like referencing like, because it's like a sitcom thing and they're in like a house and it's like the whole thing is like this whole family dynamic and they're mourning I don't even remember the story last year about Daytona Winds, but there was like a main guy who was like and anyways. But
I think last year there was like a wedding that was getting called off because there was like a jilted lover that came in at the end and like sweep the husband away or something.
Right, and then the husband is dead now in this new one.
The father.
The father, okay. But like they just started like doing these like they would make a joke and then there would be like no laugh track over it intentionally and like you could hear like coughing in the back, like the whole like silence with the added cough in the back so you know it's extra like bad.
Yeah, the joke is that this is a sitcom that's not funny and so the studio audience is not laughing.
But it was like such a delay in it. And then they would also do these weird zoom ins. Like they would do like they had that thing where the ants came in or whatever. Mm-hmm. But like they would like zoom in like real close on the ants in like red lighting and like stay on it for too long. I originally I was like, are they trying to reference like WandaVision? Because I was like, this feels like the moments where like I'm not a Marvel person, by the way. Merlin is trying to like slowly get me into Marvel stuff.
It's not working.
But like the whole when what's her name? No, not Red Widow. What's the
Wanda?
Wanda. Sure. Okay. Yeah. I didn't think like whatever.
It's named WandaVision because it's Wanda and
Vision. I know Vision. But like when she's having the moments of like having like the flashbacks or whatever, or the moments where she like, is like almost trying to like snap out of this like simulation or whatever she's in. I thought that that's what they were referencing, right? When they were doing these like...
Oh, no, I didn't get that at all.
Well, and then at a certain point, like it just keeps on going that way. And at one point I was like, are they like doing like an Adult Swim reference? But like why? And then come to find out... That's exactly what they were doing because the whole thing was in tribute to Tim and Eric. Awesome show. Great job. I don't know why, because neither of them were there. Neither of them were the guest judges. Like, I do not understand why they made that choice.
Yeah, it was real awkward and real, I felt like there were punchlines that were delivered well by the cast. They were completely ruined by that weird gap and cough thing that they were doing. And it was awful.
But also like, and so Danny Trejo shows up, but they were like teasing that somebody big shows up. I love Danny Trejo. Don't understand why that's a big deal.
Is he on that show?
I haven't watched Tim and Eric in a long time. I used to be a big Adult Swim fan. And I love, there's a genre of that style of show, but one, you have to know what you're getting into. Like, you can't just spring that on an unsuspecting audience and think they're going to get the reference and think they're going to get the style of show.
Yeah, I feel like there's not a lot of crossover audience for Drag Race and this.
Very little.
Tim and Eric.
See, you don't even know. Like,
I've never even heard of this thing.
But it's like the Eric Andre style of comedy where it's
okay.
It's,
Yeah, it's very much you have to know what you're getting into. And if you are in the right mindset for it, yeah, it's probably really funny.
But I do not understand why they chose to go this route whatsoever. Like, especially, like, the guest judge was on some, like, there was an actor, but he's from, like, some, like, serious show. I can't remember.
Well, no, I mean, What We Do in the Shadows is definitely comedy.
Oh, okay. I don't watch it.
It's a satirical show about vampires.
But it is not Adult Swim style from my understanding.
No.
Like, I do, for the life of me, did not understand why they made that decision. So in the top, we have Malaysia, Mistress, Anitra, and Marsha. And then in the bottom, we have Spice, we have Aura, and we have Jax. I don't even distinctly remember, like, I literally was like, what did they show of Jax's performance? I thought they had literally like cut it because and probably from the fact that I was so distracted by everything. Like, I could not remember a single line delivery that she gave.
Was Jax the character that took the mother into the kitchen and then literally stayed there the entire rest of the show?
Maybe. Her character also was, when they were picking the parts, like, she was like, oh, the description says she's a stoner, so I can like resonate with that.
Yeah, she was like the assistant or something to the mother.
Which also, I love that Rue in the critiques was just like, when Jax was like, yeah, I kind of got to focus on the fact that it was a stoner character to where I had to act a certain way. And Rue was like, yeah, the thing about it was you just needed to make it funny. Like, it was like, I love when Rue was just like, yeah, but you just weren't funny, so.
Yeah, but that's also not, like, I know that Rue was being more helpful than other directors we've had in the past, but she was still not being very helpful in what we saw with Jax. She was just doing more of that, do it again, and giving very less helpful direction to her. And I just don't feel like Rue was giving very helpful direction to Jax. And she was giving more helpful direction to other people. And I feel like what happens, and what usually happens even on the runway, is that Rue will give helpful suggestions to people that she wants to keep around, and to people that she's kind of written off as you're not winning, she just stops trying.
Yeah, I agree. And then we finally get this sort of like, I think, long-awaited confrontation between Spice and the judges about the sort of repetitiveness of the looks and also what she's been presenting and the rehearsal element of it. I think this is a conflict we're going to be seeing brewing for a little bit, I think, on this show.
I hope not. I'm kind of hoping that she, gets her shit together or goes home, because it's become extremely frustrating. I mean, we don't usually talk in depth about the runway looks, but her look again this week, her look was better than it has been. And I feel like it wasn't a constant echo of the same bandeau and miniskirt.
Right.
But I still felt like it looked like Spice. I felt like it overall looked good. I just thought it wasn't up to par with, like, it didn't do anything extra, didn't do anything special. It was pretty, but beyond that.
She's cute.
Yeah.
So Mistress ends up winning this week's challenge. Congratulations to her. I think it was really well deserved.
I agree.
I think she put in a lot of good effort and got the part she wanted. So at the end of the day, that worked out. And then the bottom two, we have Aura and we have Jax, and they lip sync to.
Before we get to that, where Spice got critiqued for always doing this cutesy bullshit, and then they tell her she's safe, and then she does it again with the little, like, tiny little clutch on the purse and then the tiptoeing away thing.
And then Michelle got laser eyes.
And Rue literally says, cue the sniper rifle. It was great.
Yeah, she's got it's bold. It's bold with her to,
It was great television, but it was not a good move.
Yeah, but Aura and Jax are in the bottom, and they lip sync to Sweetest Pie by Megan Thee Stallion and Dua Lipa. I was surprised that this is apparently the first Megan Thee Stallion song on Drag Race.
I thought it was really good. It was really well done.
Yeah, the rap is a little difficult, but I think they both did pretty well. Jax obviously killed it in terms of all the, the acrobatics, but also the vibe of the song. She had energy. She had good energy. I think she delivered in a big way.
I completely agree. So we are halfway through the season now. So it is time to start looking ahead at who we think might end up at the end of all this. They, in recent years, have done top 4. So, who do you think that could be? Who are you looking at?
Well, I think, Saja Colby, I think, really sticks out. I think Mistress obviously is really asserting herself and sort of being like the narrator of the season and everything that she's been bringing to the show. I also really like Lux. I think Lux is always towards the top of the pack, and I always have a soft spot for Anitra as well, and I'm glad that she's kind of rebounded a little bit from like a couple weeks of being safe, from and having an amazing performance the first week. That's who I would hope at the end of the day would be my top 4.
I tend to agree. I think it is possible for Lucy to edge in there,
Right.
but she needs to separate herself from the pack. She needs to really pull ahead, and like her looks are great, and like on any other season she'd be in the top 3 every week, but it's just not hitting. And she has mentioned that on Untucked and being frustrated about how she hasn't been in the top 3 really. And she really just wants to stand out, and I think that she can. I think she can get to that top 4 situation, but she's going to have to step it up. But I'd really love to see her there because she is a great competitor.
Yeah, I agree completely. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking all things Real Housewives. Don't go anywhere.
Well, hello, friends. I'm your pal in the mainstream media.
And I'm the Riz.
And, Riz, it takes years of strenuous, dedicated training before you're worthy to step inside a professional wrestling ring. But it takes even more time to develop complex, highly astute opinions about professional wrestling. Am I right?
That is correct. And you know where we can find that?
Yes.
On the Wrestling Mayhem.
That's right.
Sidekick Media Services. We are your sidekick in business for social media, video production, and more. Find out more at sidekickmediaservices.com.
Welcome back to A Gay and His Enby, and we are starting in on our Bravo, fucking Bravo section. We are starting off with Real Housewives of New Jersey.
Yeah, Jersey, last week's premiere was really good. I think they continued on with the momentum. I think we're seeing a lot more of the intenser drama that we're going to see fleshed out later in the season, kind of getting its start this episode, which I'm excited about. But we come back from the sort of aftermath of the photo shoots for the calendar, and Jennifer storming off, and Dolores and her getting into the issue that they were having. I think we both in agreement that I think we're kind of with Dolores on terms of this fight.
Yeah.
Like she really had been kind of all last season sort of been accused of being like the sort of like middle, never taking a side, but at a certain point was always, when they played back the clips from last season, like she did defend Jennifer a lot.
Against everybody. She went up against every other member of that cast for Jennifer. And for Jennifer to turn around and put it on Dolores, I love Dolores. I'm a Dolores stan, tattoo it on my butt. This woman is phenomenal. I love her. She's probably my favorite member of the cast.
I have a feeling this could be her season in terms of like getting a really big like vocal role.
Yeah.
Because I think some people think she kind of is sort of more of a background character in many sense.
I think she took that role because Teresa has in the past been so
dominant
and but less dominant and more strict about who she allows close to her.
Yeah.
And, last season there was such a huge schism in the cast, between the people on Teresa's side and the people against Teresa. And it's been that way for a few seasons now. And Dolores, at the end of the day, wanted to be with Teresa. And so she knew that if she wanted to do that, she had to take a step back and not really challenge her on anything. And I'm glad that she's at the end of last season and now really kind of standing up for herself and like, no, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Like, I'm going to have a voice and you're going to listen to me.
Well, and we'll talk later in the episode too, but I thought it was very interesting also that Teresa's kind of being peacemaker And
yeah,
like,
that was weird.
and like playing Switzerland, I guess you could say, between her and Jennifer. I think it's an interesting turn of events in terms of that.
Like
regard.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers over here. What's going on in Jersey?
Yes, but then we sort of get a look at everyone's kind of going through throughout their week. That dig that Olivia, Jennifer's daughter, got in on her about. I forgot even what it was in the context of it, but her being like, "Oh, and me fall and risk my beautiful nose that's actually natural." And the look on Jennifer's face, someone
The
said
look
it,
on my face, jeez.
but it was almost Jennifer's look. Someone said was like both like, really, girl, but also like almost prideful.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yes, you're my daughter. Like, you know how to read.
Her daughter continued to show out every time she was on screen this episode. It was gold.
Yeah. So, and then there's also the big development. So we're at Jennifer's house, and Danielle comes over with her kids to kind of, I guess, have like a little like play date, I guess, with the two kids to get to know each other better. They sort of like, and Danielle's like going like gaga over Jennifer's house, which they used to, kind of crap on Jennifer's house in like past seasons for being a little too over the top. I love her house personally.
Look, she still didn't need to stop and list off the fact that they had a basketball court and all of these things. Like, she is pretentious about her house.
But I mean, I think she's earned it. At the end of the day, if you got the money and it's Housewives at the end of the day.
I mean, fair, but
besides that, so they sort of get to talking over like cheese and fruit and stuff like that. And they eventually FaceTime Teresa to sort of see what Teresa, about the kind of reconciliation between her and Margaret from last episode and see how that went. And then we find out all the stuff about how, because Jennifer is basically asking Teresa, like, did you ask her about Laura? And Teresa's like, no, I didn't bring it up. And apparently this girl, Laura, who is an ex-friend of Margaret's.
who we've seen on the show before.
In like never like in like talking things, but
Right.
like, she's been at parties, she's been at events and stuff like that. And Margaret says later, like, she was like a childhood best friend. So like this clearly is like long standing. And that basically at some point, Laura, according to Jennifer, was emailing her and Teresa stuff about Margaret and about like basically being like, I have information on her that I think you should know about.
That is interesting to go back over kind of the phrasing of Jennifer asking Teresa if she had brought it up to Margaret.
Yeah.
Which to me makes it seem like maybe Jennifer did have the intent. I mean, they get into the fight later in the episode, but maybe Jennifer did have the intention of bringing that to Margaret and not letting it get out anywhere.
Well, yeah, and I think, there's a debate. I think the debate that hopefully we'll see receipts from is whether or not this was Laura going to them and trying to be messy herself, or Margaret says that it seemed like Jennifer was digging for info,
which Jennifer has a history of doing.
Well, but I mean, there was that whole dialogue last season too, and I think Jennifer made fair points about the difference between like digging and like. I think I want to see how the dialogue actually went.
That's true, but when you have. At a certain point, you have to start looking at yourself when everybody and their mama starts bringing you dirt on people.
Sure.
Like at that point, you have created a reputation of yourself as a bone carrier. And if you don't want that reputation, maybe don't wear those shoes.
Well, I think it's also like, I think it was interesting. Jennifer was like, I thought in the back of my head, if Margaret was in this situation, would she, listen to this information and take from it? And she was like, yeah, she would. And I do agree with her on that.
I agree too.
Margaret has had sort of a reputation of being somebody that has gotten information. I mean, she was the one that eventually got information on Bill cheating on Jennifer however many years ago. Mm-hmm. Like there, people, tree huggers cover your ears, but there are a lot of like Teresa fans that think like, the fact that Margaret was digging for stuff about Louis, whether
I
that's
thought
valid
you
or
meant
not.
actual green tree or
no,
like
they call themselves tree huggers.
No, I know, but I thought you meant like environmentalist. And I'm like, what does this have to do with anything?
Oh God. No, yes, environmentalists.
Like,
don't
what are you
cover
going to
either.
shit on the environment for? What are you doing?
But like, Margaret does have that reputation as well, I think, and I think that's and part of that allegedly is what Laura was saying was that Margaret has sort of dug up information on people, and it also made me think like even Jackie has mentioned in the past, like there was that one comment Jackie made in like an after show, I think it was, about how like you don't want to be on the wrong side of Margaret because she has. Basically implying that Margaret has info on you to sort of get back at you.
Which is fair. And, thinking about it, it could just be that I like Margaret better because she's against Teresa, has been in the past. And I was very much not on Teresa's side on most of everything that's happened in the past.
And we'll get to the fight with her and Jennifer later because I think it's where I am with their dynamic.
I think there are points on both sides.
But also... Danielle asked, like, did she bring up anything else about anyone else in the group? And Teresa and Jennifer go silent, and they're like, I don't want to bring that up. And they're very much like, implying with their eyes, but like being like, we're not going to bring this up sort of thing. And from what we know from filming and the reports from filming and sort of what has transpired on the season, it seems like what they're hinting at is the rumor that had gone around that Margaret was the one that was spreading stuff about Melissa kissing another guy, which was allegedly what led to this whole fallout that eventually led to Melissa and Joe not going to Teresa's wedding. So we'll see how that plays out.
And see, they didn't, to me, the fact that they paused and gave a meaningful look means that they very much intended on bringing it up this season, but they didn't want to bring it up yet.
Maybe.
To me, because if they didn't want to bring it up, they could have immediately just said no, and it would have been fine. Like it never would have seen the light of day. But the fact that they knowingly left a gap there and kind of gave the eye wiggles and things to indicate that there was something there, there was something to not talk about.
To me, I think it's because that would be the biggest I wouldn't be surprised of the fact that Margaret was like maybe digging stuff on Jennifer or Teresa or anything. Like if she had done something to Melissa, that I would be actually surprised about. And that's why I think that's the kind of like...
Yeah, but I think Margaret's an equal opportunity gossiper.
That's fair. But so that goes down. We later go to Rachel, one of the new housewives, and her house, and sort of getting sort of a more like intimate view of her life with her family. I will say we had talked about her husband and sort of like the interestingness of he was more attractive this episode.
Yes, and I think I figured out what makes his head look short, and it's because he shaves the underside of his chin.
Yeah.
Like his beard only goes to his jawline. Like it doesn't go beyond that. So it makes the whole beard look cut off, and it makes his head look cut off.
And it was a little too intense to where like
Yes.
it was a little bit more faded this time around to where it looked better. And she talked about their relationship and about how like he was kind of like trying to be like macho in the beginning and like sort of bragging that he had this like big pizzeria, and she was like, I don't give a fuck about your pizzeria, essentially.
I do like a good pizza.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, but they have two like very young daughters, I think under the age of 2, she said. And then she has an older stepson from, I guess, a previous relationship of his. And I thought what she was talking about, like being a stepmother, I thought was very interesting and sort of their dynamic, and like that they kind of have simply like it's not viewed in a separate light. It's just as she's his mother as much as anything.
Yeah.
I liked her in this segment. I thought she seemed very down to earth and very normal and not like overly trying to put anything on for the cameras or like,
yeah.
And part of me really appreciates that at the end of the day.
Yeah. I will say that as daunting as coming into a show like Real Housewives in general, but especially Jersey, where it's a very close-knit group, and by and large, new additions to the cast have not gone well. Cough, cough, the twins.
Yes. Oh, God.
Or
the
Soggy
twins.
Flicker.
Who we'll get to later.
they are doing well, I think. I know it's only episode 2, but I really like both of these new girls. I think that they're good additions and mesh well with everyone else. They don't feel like they stick out at all in a negative way.
But they're not trying too hard. I think also after the season of Salt Lake, where like we had a lot of friends who were like trying everything. Like it's nice to have people just sort of like be natural.
Yeah, which is odd to think of in the Housewives, arena at all, because nobody is natural. Everyone's plucked and prodded.
Yeah. So we go on to Margaret having, I guess, sort of like a little girls' lunch or whatever at her place, and having some people over. Melissa brought over sprinkle cookies, which
I thought it was funny.
It's very funny. It's also very like.
I mean, sure, it's a 11-year-old joke, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, but it's interesting that like it made me think a lot about like eventually if this Teresa and Melissa dynamic is going to end. Which I feel like after this season, one of them's got to go based off of how things are looking like in terms of their dynamic since filming. I think there is a lot of valid criticism about what does Melissa look like on the show without Teresa?
Yes, but I think that if one of them was going to have a spin-off show, Teresa's would be more successful.
No, absolutely.
And I think that Melissa could exist on this show without Teresa, and it's fine. I'm
saying it more of the nicer version than what I've seen online. There's also a lot of like, again, the tree hugger fandom that's very much like Melissa can't go one scene without talking about Teresa, which
sure, but a lot of her storyline has revolved around that tumultuous
dynamic.
Relationship and the family dynamic. In fact, it's not even just her storyline. The entire show has really centered on, since the Manzos left, have really centered on the dynamic between Teresa and Joey and Melissa.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
it's hard to break from that, I guess you could say.
But without one of them on the show, maybe she would have that freedom. Either or, whoever is left would have that freedom. But I think that if Teresa splits off, it should be her and Louis having a show together. It should be called Love Bubble.
Oh, God. Can we retire that? I'm so over that. But no, so we get to this sort of like little party that Margaret's doing. We find out that other Jennifer, Jen Fessler, I think is her last name. I have to say her last name because I don't want to mix her up with the other Jennifer. Is that she became friends with Margaret through Siggy, who you mentioned before.
Soggy Flicker.
Which I did not think I would hear her name on TV again.
I was really hoping we never would.
No, yeah. But they kind of do this like fun little game where they're like, asking.
I mean, unless she's being indicted for something, then I'd be happy to hear her name on TV.
Sure. But like they're doing this fun game where they're reading sort of like provocative questions and putting their answers in a bowl and reading and trying to guess who said what. We found out that apparently Joe Benigno likes blowjobs that truck drivers can see in his car.
Oh, no, we can't talk about sucking dick on the podcast anymore.
Well, we can talk about it on the podcast, but we just can't post it on TikTok, apparently.
TikTok will censor our clip.
We see you, TikTok. But, and then, so they kind of discuss things, and Margaret brings again up the whole stuff with this Laura friend and how she kind of is off-put by Jennifer, digging for it, in her words. We then later go to this first scene with Dolores and Paulie, Dolores' new man, at his new apartment. I all I could think about was his kitchen. He has a lot of like the the refrigerator doors that are just a clear glass, like the Yolanda Hadid refrigerators.
I hate those.
It was very like a little too like a robot like database, like it didn't feel like a home in many ways. But I will say I think their dynamic seems really good from this like sort of early start in the beginning. It seems like Dolores is really happy. They talk a bit about how they both feel that like Frank is a little like either off-put or like unwilling to like maybe have more interactions with Paulie out of either fear or like, not wanting to overstep or just like too many in his emotions, I guess you could say, which I thought was interesting.
as much as I love Dolores, I think that this is her fault.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't put a clear boundary in place when her and Frank split. And they've remained so close over the years that they, even though they weren't in a relationship, quote unquote, they were still in a relationship.
Yeah.
And you can't, like, he feels like a third wheel now. And he's literally not connected to anybody else on the show, but he's still on the show.
Yeah.
Like,
it's hard.
It's to the point where now his girlfriend is now being introduced to the group, and he's still not a house husband. He's still not even a house boyfriend. He's a house ex.
Sure.
What are you doing here?
But I also think, people have always teased the idea of like, oh, Dolores and Frank should get back together, and Dolores has been always really opposed to the idea, but we don't really feel the sense that Frank is necessarily opposed to it, I think. Like, I think Frank would hope at the end of the day that there could have been something. I think based off of what Dolores said, there were a lot of mistakes that Frank made in their relationship, and it's just a hard line in that regard.
Yeah. But I also think that Frank has grown a lot and matured a lot, even since he's been on the show. I don't know. And maybe it's just because I think he's the most fuckable husband on the show. But so I do have a little bit of a soft spot. But, I think he's really grown a lot and think that he could be what Dolores needs.
Yeah.
But I don't know that Dolores would ever feel like she could trust him fully again, which I understand. Once you've been cheated on, it's very hard to go back.
Yeah. So then we get to sort of Melissa and Joe discussing things, because they had mentioned earlier in the episode that they were going to this, like, I think it's like some MTV Movie Award or something. Then Teresa and Louis were also going to be there, and so they're sort of like debriefing about how it was awkward and how Joey was like, it's just sad how things are, and like how we can't even take a picture together, etc. We had this discussion when it was happening. So also, like, prior to this episode airing, there was a leak of text.
Not a leak. Teresa put it on social.
Teresa and or Louis sent it. Like, that's the only thing that would make sense into who.
Well, they were screenshots from Teresa's phone.
Right.
So you only get that by having her phone.
Yeah. So Teresa released these screenshots because there was a lot of talk last episode about how, Melissa had texted her after the reunion and then didn't hear for 3 months, and then they started filming again. And there were you talked about how, yes, there were some text messages in between that, but it was very superficial stuff, etc. But the one issue I have with what Joe Gorga is saying here is that the bigger thing for me is that there were text messages from Louis to Melissa and Joe in like this like group chat, inviting them to the Teresa's 50th, which by the way, what we saw last week was a separate thing. This would have been something that was before filming started.
Right. It was the
off
week
camera.
From what I can gather, it was a little trip,
somewhere like it would have been like a vacation essentially.
Right. A little group vacation. No cameras before the show started, like the weekend before, I think.
And I think Louis, in the tone of the text message, was just like, we want to fix this thing. We want to get on the right track, etc. Let's do this off of TV, because that's the part where it's like, it's not healthy to try to fix this on TV, which I totally agree with. And Joe and Melissa are very just like definitively like, we've seen this story, 5 times over, and we're done with it. It's no disrespect, but we're just done. We don't want anything in terms of that. The line in the sand's been drawn. It's good.
But I do think that it's important to note that they specifically say, look, we're family, but we don't have to be friends, and that's okay. Like we still have a relationship. We're family, but we are not friends. Like, we don't have to act like we don't have to go get our nails done together. That's fine.
Right. But that's my thing, is that though they were saying this in the sense that it was, my issue was, they were saying like, oh, Teresa only messaged us back like substantially when we were about to start filming, implying that Teresa is only attempting to do this because we're filming again, because we're in front of cameras, because she got embarrassed at the reunion, and therefore she wants to save her public image. And to me, I feel Joe is doing the exact same thing. I in terms of having this conversation on camera, saying like, well, we couldn't even take a photo together at this award show on the red carpet. How far have we fallen as a family, et cetera, et cetera, when beforehand you're drawing a line. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad thing to draw that line. I understand feeling like you're on a hamster wheel with this situation and it's going to be the same thing over and over again. I get that. I understand that feeling based of the 10 plus years of what they've gone through, plus some, even before the show. But I feel like to say that in text messages before filming and then to on camera say this, to me, it's kind of doing the same thing you're accusing Teresa of doing.
I don't agree. So here's the thing. For me, because Melissa tried to be done with this after the reunion last year, so that it was well before we started filming again, right? It was months. And then this happened on the red carpet during filming, and I'd have to look back, but it was probably something that broke online that they didn't really acknowledge each other. There was like maybe frustrating, like, so if it was if it was already out there and already being said, that there, like, they kind of have to do something. Like they kind of have to at least mention it.
Yeah.
Like, and they had already mentioned previously that they were going to this. So if it didn't come back up again after the fact, it would have been weird.
But I think and to clarify, I don't think Joe is saying, I went up to her to ask if we could take a group picture and she said no.
That's what I think happened.
Well, maybe. But I think what he said, from what I got from what he said, was we're both so distant to where there was no instinct to get together and do a group photo. And to me, if I'm Teresa and I read those text messages back, I wouldn't have that instinct either. And also from last episode when they were at the roller rink for that disco party, Teresa and Louis go up at one point and say hi to Joe. And Joe's kind of like, hey, how's it going? And then kind of ignores, like, it's a very cold response. And so I think and maybe Joe's point is it's both of us. And if I can understand that, but I also don't think that you can tell somebody, I'm good. Like, as firm as Melissa and Joe were in those text messages to Teresa and Louis, I'm good. We know where we stand, period. I don't think then you can fault that person after that for not instinctually wanting something.
See, I feel like you're putting the line in a place where it wasn't to me by reading that. You're reading, and I mean, it's open to interpretation, right? Because we don't have Melissa here.
Sure.
But actually we do. She's coming in right now. Hi. No, I'm kidding. No, like, we don't know exactly where that line was drawn, but for me, when I read that, I see we're not friends, but we're still family. I'm not super close with my brother, but if I'm going to an event where I know he's also going to be there and we're on the red carpet together, like, we're not together, but he's like right there, I'd go, hey, come take a picture. Like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. We're not on red carpets all the time. This is kind of cool. Let's take a picture together. Like, it doesn't matter where our relationship is. We could be fighting at that moment, and I would still say, hey, let's take a picture.
I think the problem is that both of them throughout the time on the show have accused each other, and Teresa's been accused of it particularly a lot from other people too as well in like older seasons, of like playing to the media and like thinking they're this big star, and like, like back in the earlier seasons, it was the tabloids. It was that Teresa was always going to the tabloids to like tell all the stuff about everything that was going on. Like, they're both kind of being accused of that. So to me, on a red carpet of a thing, it's like, are we doing this for the public or are we doing this for our family? I think that's and by the way, I also think in the sense that I agree with like Dolores and everyone else who is like, I think it's better if they probably go their separate ways.
I agree, but that can't happen with them both staying on the show.
That's the thing. But then we go to Danielle's house because she's doing a mozzarella demonstration.
Cheese.
You hated how to like.
It's mozzarella. You don't have to like mozzarella. Like I
Okay,
get that
Giada
y'all,
De Laurentiis.
I get that y'all are Italian. I understand, but like you don't have to like do the. I don't know how to explain the hand motion. You all know the hand motion.
The hand motion he's making right now.
The Italian hand motion. Like you don't have to do that every time that you say a word that is borrowed from Italian. You can just move forward.
And then we also earlier in the episode we saw that Teresa was sending out her wedding invitations to everyone, and there was these like beautiful like placard sort of like glass placard things, really beautiful stuff. And then we get to Danielle's house, and then we get the bomb drop that we all saw, which was that Ramona from Real Housewives of New York showed the invitation on her Instagram with the website and the password to get into the registry
and the address to the where the ceremony was.
And it's like, oh my God. And Teresa has to scramble and fix it, but
absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, so they everyone's at Danielle's house for this mozzarella event. That sentence alone is crazy to me. The only person that's not there is Jackie, and Danielle says she didn't invite Jackie because she was getting a bad vibe from her at the recent events that they had been at.
Because she didn't like being ignored when she was standing there and just being left out of the conversation.
I think it's interesting the fact that Jackie seems a little off this season, it does feel like she's a little jealous of not being sort of like main cast member anymore. I think I
don't get that. I think I think maybe we're just seeing a different Jackie than we've ever seen before, and we're not sure what that looks like yet. In terms of, her mental health and her physical health, and she's more confident than she's ever been before.
Which I saw that she's coming out with a book, I think, sort of about her journey with her eating disorder and stuff like that, and hopefully, and that I've always been appreciative of Jackie on this show and sort of her journey in that regard and everything that she sort of talked about. It just, at least with the newbies, she seems very like guard up with them.
I mean, I can understand she was the new girl, so like her new girl status is being stripped, and she's stepping back from being a housewife and is just a friend of now. So I mean, I can understand it's a lot of transition for someone who didn't do well with transition before, and in fact responded to transition with, her eating disorder. And so I can understand why it might trigger a little bit,
right.
But I think mostly she's just trying to stand up for herself more than she was before.
Yeah. And then Margaret and Jennifer get into a fight immediately, almost immediately in terms of their issues. It's really hard to follow their dynamic at this point.
Yeah. Wait, who's dynamic?
Margaret and Jennifer?
Margaret and Jennifer. Yeah. Yeah, it's, yeah.
They've both hit each other with blows to where nobody's first anymore and nobody's like on the high ground to where like.
See, I feel like, and I said this while we were watching it, why doesn't anybody just sit down and talk?
I know. But it's like, I think they also perform when they're in a group setting to like sort of like.
Also, if everybody just sat and talked through their issues, then it wouldn't be Housewives.
Yeah. And Margaret at one point says that Jennifer has marijuana paranoia, which like Jennifer was then saying marijuana paranoia, and I missed that Margaret had like I thought she had just misheard her say paranoia as marijuana, but no, Margaret apparently said that. I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, there are some people that get paranoid with pot usage, but for the most part, it doesn't affect people like that, and
it seemed like a weird attack on pot usage.
Yeah, it felt really weird.
And also, like Margaret or Jennifer in her confessional, just being like, "What does she think? I'm just like token up on the side, I'm not like some crackhead." Yeah, the crackheads that smoke weed. Like I didn't get any. It's just. It at certain points becomes a little gibberish at this point. And Margaret was kind of like at that point as well, where it's just like, this is a brick wall. She literally yells at one point, "Just drown me in the fucking pool." And then it transitions to Dolores and Jennifer, and then they get into it as well. And Teresa is trying her best to like.
Oh yeah, well, it got to Dolores because Teresa was like trying to calm it down, and then Jennifer's like throws some barb. Like it wasn't even directed at Dolores; it was just like collateral damage. It was just like, what are you coming after her for? She's just sitting here, peaceful.
And the best is Jen Fessler was like trying to be like, guys, I think it's just like a miscommunication. And Dolores is me like, butt out of it, new Jen. She didn't specifically say that, but like that's what it felt like.
Oh, okay. Well, no wonder I missed it because it's not what was
And then
said.
this was also the weird part where like the new Jen was like being like hamming it up, and I can understand why she used to be a friend of Siggy because she like
Oh Lord,
she starts shoving mozzarella in her mouth for some reason. I didn't know what she was doing. She's like eating Melissa's sandwich off on the side.
oh yeah. She at some point, her and Melissa are just standing there, and she turns around and looks at the table between them and goes, "Is that yours?" And she goes, "Yeah, you can have it." And she just reaches down and grabs it. I thought she was reaching for a cocktail or something.
Yeah.
At least with alcohol, you kind of understand. Melissa was like, "Yeah, it's really good." And then she picks it up and goes, "But there's mustard on it. How is it good?" And I'm like, "Really?"
There's eating a scene, and then there's literally eating a scene.
All the mustard slander is just not.
And then somehow this gets because Teresa and Jennifer, it dies down a little bit, and then Teresa and Jennifer are talking, and Jennifer's like, "Oh God, I can't believe I have to go to your wedding with all these people." So Teresa brings up the seating at the wedding. And
God.
And then we get into this whole thing from the wedding party and where Melissa and Joe were said it, and you know, all the stuff from the reunion last about like them being seated at an opposite table from the family table, and like and they're going at it. And I also couldn't even follow this in terms of, I feel like 3 different stories were being said, particularly by Teresa. Like I was just confused about the whole dynamic of it all. And it's like, none of you are listening to, like, again, surprised with Housewives, but it's like, oh my God, none of you are listening to each other at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, even since, I think it was yesterday, somebody sent out like a hand-drawn seating arrangement.
Yeah.
But it was
allegedly.
But it was like, this doesn't prove anything. Like, I could write this up and tweet it out, but it doesn't mean that it's real. It doesn't mean that like you could have, I don't get this. I don't get what you're trying to prove with this. It doesn't prove anything.
Yeah. I don't feel this is going to end anytime soon, obviously, between these two. And it's just going to get worse. And even the preview for next week seems like even more intense stuff is getting into it with Teresa's daughters and comments that Joe and Melissa made on their podcast. And it's like, it's just going to get worse from here. But other than that, really good episode of Jersey overall.
Yeah, really good. I'm really enjoying this season. I think that it's definitely a much better vibe than it was last year.
Yeah. But let's move on to the other Real Housewife franchise of this week, which is Real Housewives of Miami over on Peacock. Another really great episode, more from their trip in the Bahamas. And it's getting much more intense in terms of all the dynamics. Surprise, surprise, now that Marisol's here. We kind of come in from the back end of Marisol coming in with the megaphone, and Adriana definitely looks upset about it. She was almost at a place with Alexia in terms of their dynamic. So they're still by the pool. Julia is admiring Lars's ass in her thought, which they've talked about. There's no way that Lars's ass is 100% just working out and
absolutely not.
But
like, also, like, good for her. I'm never going to shame somebody for getting work done that makes them more comfortable in their body.
No, but I mean, the fact that she won't cop to it is the thing.
No, but like, it's nobody else's business at the end of the day. Like, do you like what I look like or not? Like,
and clearly Julia does.
Clearly. Because there was like a puddle of drool.
Puddle of pool.
Well, there was also a pool,
But and then Julia starts talking to Lisa about the Lenny's, and she literally asks Lisa, how's the family? And Lisa just turns to her and goes, so fucked up, which I thought was such a like blunt way to say that.
But also, why are you asking that question? Bitch, you know what the family's like right now. It sucks.
It's not good. And Lisa talks about how, Lenny's saying that she wasn't home enough and stuff like that, which like, and I agree with Lisa in the sense of like, whether, I can take my faults in terms of this relationship, but that doesn't give anyone an excuse to do what Lenny's done. And I fully agree with that. That's something that you either need to communicate or something. Lisa says that she like wrote a letter to Lenny to sort of like get her feelings across in writing and stuff like that. And he probably like threw it away, she said, which
I'd have made a copy of that.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's not surprised that Lenny wouldn't, engage. He doesn't seem to be as engaged in terms of this divorce.
True, but I would use it in the divorce proceedings.
Yeah.
Like, if you are going to sit here and not even engage with me when I'm trying to make peace, even if we're not like repairing the relationship and getting back together, fine. But like, if the point is to have an amicable divorce where we are both walking away from this in the best possible situation and you won't engage,
that's a problem.
Then this judge that is presiding over this needs to be aware of that, and I need to present evidence of that fact.
Yeah. So then Adriana tries to get back into the conversation with Alexia and with Marisol this time to sort of reconcile their issues. Adriana is basically... The core of what Adriana says she's really upset about is that when she got her divorce from Frederick and Frederick left her, that Alexia and Marisol weren't there for her. Alexia says she didn't even really know what was going on in their dynamic and stuff like that they've been kind of distant since the time of filming, which, there's only a relationship is a two-way street, I guess you could say. And then this was like, Adriana was just kind of like Adriana has a tendency to like not get to the point of why she's upset, but just start throwing stuff out. She said, what was the thing she said about like, she has high cholesterol and can have a stroke, and she's mad that like they didn't know that or something. It was like,
yeah, it was like, y'all are too stressful, and like I could have a stroke at any moment, and you're causing too much stress. Like, go away.
It seemed more like she was saying the divorce was the one thing that was causing her stress, and they should have known about this and like been there. It's like, I love it. Marisol just girl, that's not my fault at the end of the day. And then again, Adriana, this whole episode of saying things she probably shouldn't, at least in my opinion, we'll get to it. But like, then brings up the fact that Marisol, I was such a good friend to you because your old boyfriend or husband, I can't remember.
I can't either.
It was hitting on me or whatever and tried to hit me up after you broke up or whatever, and like I told her, Marisol's my friend, etc. And like he said, my relationship with Marisol, I never loved Marisol, and everyone in the group was just like, why are you saying this right now? Like that's not helpful. Like that's not like, you're just hurting her right now. It doesn't, because you held this for however long, apparently. Makes it better?
No, that's not great.
I didn't get her point with that whatsoever. And things are definitely not good in terms of their dynamic, as we'll see later. And then later, Nicole and Larsa try to make up in terms of their issue this whole season. And Larsa, at least to Nicole's face, is very like seemingly apologetic and is very much like, you said things, I said things. I think we both had our guards up, and like we should just, put that to the side and sort of like get to know each other on a more personal level. And Nicole seems appreciative. And then like Nicole in her confessional is just being like, I'm glad that Larsa can just admit that what she did was wrong, and then, maybe we can move forward. And then cut to Larsa's confessional. I mean, I'm not apologetic for anything I did, but like, I just wanted to, stop the repetitive aspect of it. And it's like, oh my God, Larsa.
Yeah.
You literally accused her of like a very salacious rumor that is seemingly completely false.
Completely false.
And, but that's Larsa for you. Marisol and Alexia are talking about, Marisol being back on this trip and about how the stuff with like, she was worried that somebody was doing brujeria on her. and that that Marisol got Julia's stone that she had given her, and she said she threw it off the balcony because she is so worried about. Well, and she's saying that like I have these like intense feelings. I can't really channel my mother right now, which is something that she apparently was able to do for like, since her passing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So something, I mean, it could be that's where I'm like, it could be a deeper.
But there's like also a lot of different things that could affect that. So like, why are you blaming this little stone that your friend gave you?
I think it was Nicole that said like, Julia is literally like on a farm, like nurturing animals, and you think she's the one that's like trying to like cast a spell on you or something. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, to be fair, in the more traditional sense of what a witch looks like, I mean, she probably would be on a farm tending to animals. But I mean,
you're more versed in the lore.
But in the more stereotypical evil witch trying to cast curses at you, she's not like cackling in some high tower slaving over a cauldron.
Yeah.
Like, that's not Julia. Like, that's not her at all.
But they go to dinner later on the beachside at night, and they brought this like therapist healer woman to sort of do like a thing with it. They said it was a rage release ritual.
Yeah, well, I mean, I felt that it was weird calling it a ritual, but it's literally something that people do in therapy.
Yeah,
like all therapy, can be like attuned magically and have like things but a lot of spells that witches do really are based off of psychology and therapeutic practices and things like that. We just amplify that.
Or as Kiki puts it, it's like ejaculating.
That was so weird.
But she wasn't wrong necessarily.
I mean, kind of. I mean, it is a build up to a release. But that's about as close as you get.
Yeah, it was, and I love that Nicole just being like, I think we're fine getting our rage out in this group. That's definitely not our issue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it is, though, for certain people. Like, I think that people will point their rage shallowly at each other when they aren't dealing with what's lurking under the surface and what they're really mad at.
Yeah.
And people will go off on little stupid things, and we've seen that a lot, and that's across Housewives and reality TV really in general. But people will get mad at people for stupid little things and never address the big issue of why they're upset in the first place, where that rage is really stemming from.
Yeah, that's fair. But they get into dinner first off, and then Julia and Marisol are getting into it about the whole like Marisol like throwing away the stone, and the whole witch element of it all, and then that transitions to Julia and Alexia getting into it, and Julia saying like, you were in last night at the dinner, you were shooting me that barracuda look, that you were giving me the barracuda eyes, and Alexia is confused, and as they're doing this, Lisa is like passing around her phone on the table pictures of a barracuda to get like it was.
I don't think it looked like her much.
No, Alexia's face is interesting. I'll say that much. It's Real Housewives generally, but also it's Miami on top of that. Like, everyone's got like a new face and a new,
Yeah.
But, they're getting, and, Julia thinks Alexia's still harboring stuff from the Key West trip and their whole fight about, Russian hookers and all that stuff. Like, just the topics on this show. The words coming out of my mouth, I'm just like, this is the show we watch. And then, Marisol also brings up with Adriana, because Adriana tries to defend Julia, and then Marisol and her get into it. And that Marisol was offended of how Adriana brought up the thing with her boyfriend earlier in the day. And like, she said, like, she didn't go into detail, but Marisol was saying in her confessional that like it was like a really heavy breakup, and like she said she was almost like anorexic at one point because she was so upset. Like, so like it seemed like a really intense particular breakup to where Adriana bringing it up kind of seemed like an extra low blow in that sense. But they're in their dynamic, and then literally just passes around the table these fights, because then it goes from there to Adriana and Larsa, because Larsa's trying to I think she starts trying to get Adriana to talk about the sort of core feeling of what she has about Alexia and Marisol, and that she feels abandoned by them or whatever. And kind of says what they were talking about when they were getting massages, and how she basically said Alexia says all my life is a mystery. Bitch, look at your life, or something like that regard. And then they get into a fight about the use of the word bitch, and Adriana's like, no, I meant bitch, bitch,
it was so stop.
And
Y'all
then,
knew what? No, stop.
Yeah, we've had this discussion I think before about the term bitch and how it kind of can. Who in a recent Housewives season was really upset with the word bitch being used?
I don't remember.
It's a very common offense that people have.
I think it was on Beverly Hills.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then so they just start yelling at each other, and Larsa's being I love Larsa being girl, if you keep going at me like this, I'll beat your ass. Larsa's gonna beat anyone's ass. Larsa no. And then Adriana throws her drink seemingly for no reason.
It's what is did you have a muscle spasm or something? Is what's going on?
No, and then she runs off to the therapist who is not being paid enough.
No, clearly not enough.
I also loved Larsa saying in her confessional during this point that, I never initiate conflict. Cut to the montage of every time this season she's initiated conflict with someone. It's oh my God. Yeah, yes, Larsa's the peacemaker. Kiki is, and then what was Adriana is crying to this therapist, and by the way, no tears. It was very much if I scrunch my face enough, I'll look like I'm crying sort of vibe. It was, and she's crying about if I'm gonna die one day and no one's gonna know I'm there, and my dog's gonna be
dead next to me on the ground, and I remember making the comment, no, your dog's probably gonna be fine because he'll eat you.
Oh God, it was so intense for this conversation. Maybe things are that deep seated between them, but it just doesn't feel like it. And then we cut, and Kiki's peeing in the beach for some reason. I don't know why she decided to Kiki was doing a lot this episode. I don't necessarily mind it, but it was this was kind of Kiki's episode in an undercover way.
I think you could blame a lot of it on the alcohol.
She seemed the most sober out of all of them, though, I would say.
Did she? I don't know.
She's a bit of a wild card. I like Kiki. And she talked though about how also she was really excited for the rage ritual sort of thing, because she had been cheated, and she had talked a little bit how she's been cheated on in the past, but they don't really ever go into detail with it.
Yeah.
I would love to know her backstory more.
Kiki's a friend of, right?
Yeah.
So they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean the only friend of that they really invest in, I feel are the OGs Adriana and Marisol, but
are they friends of?
Yeah, they're not official housewives.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's only so many mojitos apparently they can give out. I mean,
it's go to the bar, order another one. It's a mojito.
Yeah, I mean they're essentially housewives, I think, in that regard. And
it's not like on Beverly Hills where they hold a diamond.
No.
Diamonds are much harder to get a new one of than a mojito.
Yeah, and then so they eventually then do the rage thing where they're yelling out at the beach, and everyone's sort of half-assed doing it. Lisa's yelling "fuck you, Lenny," and all, and but Kiki was giving a full Oscars and it felt real. It didn't seem fake, but it was she was channeling Viola Davis, straight up.
She was doing the full ugly cry, snot thing. It was great.
Everyone's oh, Kiki's into this.
Look, rage. Like I said, this is something that people use in therapy. This is a thing that actually works. You can sit and start screaming, and even if at the beginning of it you're not feeling like the anger and the release of all that stuff, eventually, if you keep screaming long enough, it will dig up what is actually in there and will you'll have a very, very real, very visceral breakthrough.
It made me want to know more about like where that was coming from her, because like it seemed very intense. And then like 10 seconds later, she's like cuddling Gertie in her arms like
that
a baby.
Was so weird. Well, not even like a baby. Like she had her like she was like.
She said she was in 69 position later in the episode, which I don't think that's what that was.
How do I say this and not get taken off of every streaming platform out there?
We're fine. I can't put this on TikTok, apparently.
But due to the extensive amount of research and experience I've had in that situation, that's not what that looks like.
No.
I'm just saying.
It was very weird. But then like Lisa's talking to this therapist like one-on-one, like, yeah, I'm going through this divorce, etc. And as they're doing this, Gertie and Kiki like fall into her and knock her onto like the beach ground.
Which credit to the production team for playing that in the previews like she was tackling her on the beach. Like we thought it was coming to blows on this beach.
But Lisa goes like full on into the water, like just like she got like tackled in a football game. And Adriana's like leg gets like grazed by like
she was doing the most.
And
oh
Adriana's
my God.
like, they broke my foot.
It's like, girl, you're on sand. What?
She did when you keep replaying it back, like that. She didn't do nothing to her foot. I'm sorry. Like I this is where I'm with Alexia, where it's just like nothing happened there. Like, come on.
Like she literally like hobbles over to a chair and then like gets like a member of the hotel staff to carry her back to her hotel room.
Which I love that he almost like dropped her because he was tripping on her dress.
And then like the next day she's in a wheelchair and all bandaged up. It's like, girl.
Literally the next day, they're all in one of their rooms to like get ready to go about the day. And then they're like, okay, we're just got to wait for Julia and Adriana. And we just hear and like, oh, and as soon as they rolled her in, Marissa was like, of course she's in a fucking wheelchair. Like, this is ridiculous. Like,
much like Margaret last week with the wrist break. Next time we see Adriana, she's going to be in a full body cast.
It's just like, I mean,
it just keeps growing.
Anything at this point. But like, so, and at one point, Julia in her confessional was, because Julia is like tending to Adriana this whole time, and is like, you know, I feel like the girls aren't really empathetic of Adriana at all. I mean, she's a single mother, you know, raising a child by her. It's like,
what does that have to do with her on a vacation with her foot?
But also, her child is like 20. Like, he's definitely like, you know, he's out of the house. It's not like she's like raising a it's like she's like as if it's like Lisa's age, Lisa's kid's age. Like, no, like she's not like this, like whatever. Like I feel bad for Adriana in terms of like not having a husband and like sort of that regard. But like, come on, like it's not. She's not like staving over a kitchen stove. Like, you know, I thought that was odd, but. So they go get ready to start the day, and then Julie is also eavesdropping on the girls because they're talking about like the stuff with like the witch stuff or whatever and all that stuff. And then Nicole reveals that she was on the phone with the woman who Julia's store they went to, and apparently it's not even a Botanica. It's just like a spiritual, like sort of like I think they described it as like sort of like
it's
a
like a gift
souvenir
shop.
like a gift shop. But because apparently when you use the word Botanica, like it set off alarm bell. Like it's got a particular like
like I said last week, it is specifically has a association with Santeria specifically.
Yeah. So that's probably, I mean, that's the thing that also probably set Alexia and Marisol off.
Yeah.
I mean, like, guys, okay, like, be clear in what shops you're going to. Scroll down to the bottom of a page of everything that you're reading online. Like, let's follow all the steps, guys. Like, let's.
And apparently don't make rash comparisons to other people's situations.
Yeah, we'll get to that. And we have kind of differing opinions on that. But so they go to this private island off of the resort or whatever. Like literally, like Adriana's having to be carried into the boat.
Having to be, or
Yeah.
just is.
Yeah. And they just leave the wheelchair on the dock, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, it was a real forlorn shot of just the,
They're
wheelchair sitting on the dock by itself.
And as they're boating to the island, like they're dancing to Adriana's new song and like dancing with the boat captain and all that stuff and having a good time.
Like, shouldn't he be driving?
Sure. And then, but Adriana is literally like in her confessional being like, I was so happy that my song could bring us all together. Like, I feel real sentimental. Like, she was acting as if like this was like this like healed everything in terms of this.
Like it wouldn't have been the same situation if it was Camila Cabello or something like that.
Yeah, it's like they cut to Alexia in her confessional just being like, it was a good song. It's a good beat. It's very Sheree. I like the beat.
Yeah, but Sheree was saying that real shadily, like everything that comes out of her mouth is.
Yeah. But so they get to the island. They're all in the water and stuff like that. Kiki goes topless. Sure. Like she's very free with herself.
Like I said, doing the most this episode.
And Adriana is like upset and stuff like that. They eventually get to this like sort of seated area. And like Alexia, she tries to bring up the song thing about how it was a healing moment for everyone, and Alexia's just like breaks into her like, yeah, it was just a really good song. Like we still have issues, and the talk about like Adriana's like putting stuff on and like is being a drama queen, etc. About this stuff, and like and at one point Adriana literally goes, "Why would you not like care for me and like be empathetic of me as I broke my foot into 1,000 pieces?" It's like, oh my god, we don't even like it's not even been confirmed that you have a fracture, girl. You have like a little bruise. It's fine. You're good. And like Alexia, and this is where it gets bad because Alexia is like, well, girl, it's not really even that big of a deal. It was just an accident where they fell onto you. And Adriana, because if you've learned anything on Housewives, is always go with a metaphor. They always tend to work. Goes, well,
insert reel of every time that metaphors have never worked on this show, on any show.
And she goes, but just because it was an accident, accidents can have consequences, like Frankie. And everyone is just like, and we kind of differ. You sort of are more on Adriana's side.
Not true.
Not true.
No. If you thought from our discussion earlier that I was on Adriana's side, you misinterpreted. So, as you could probably guess, Eamon is squarely not on Adriana's side here. Like,
I don't see any scenario where that was the right thing to do.
No, I never said that it was the right thing to do. I never said that it was the best analogy to make.
Sure.
But I can understand why, when you're in that situation, in a heated discussion where you are talking off the top of your head, nothing is prepared beforehand, right? I can understand why you would reach for the example that is right in front of you that has to do with the person you're talking to's life.
Yes.
That is the most obvious place to go. And so I get why she went there, and I don't think that she necessarily should be attacked for using that analogy, because at the end of the day, her point still stands, and her point is that people should, like, I don't even remember what her point is actually at this point.
That's the thing. What was her point?
But I seem to remember, because my brain and Miami just don't mesh super well. But I want to say that the reason that the whole point was that it doesn't matter
if it was
an accident or not, the harm still exists. And that is something that is very like topical in today's society, right? It doesn't matter what your intentions were, the harm still happens. And that was the point of what she was saying. The fact that it was an accident means I can forgive them and move past it, but it doesn't mean that the harm doesn't exist and there's like still damage done to my foot. And she was making say what you will, but it was an apt metaphor.
I think the problem is...
Was it a touchy subject and should not have been gone to? Sure. I think if there had been preparation for this conversation, she wouldn't have gone there. Maybe.
Hopefully. I would hope so. But I think like you mentioned, like, you know, getting to the thing that would the person would most understand, right, in that scenario. I also think that you kind of have to factor in the person. And we've said that Alexia is kind of like the Miami Teresa. And with Teresa's history with analogies, they're not great.
I will also maintain that I don't think Jackie was in the wrong to make the metaphor that she made last season.
Sure.
So, like... But if you make an apt metaphor, I don't know why people get offended by the metaphor. Like... even like with Jackie's case, it was a hypothetical. Nobody was saying that Gia was doing coke.
Right. But I also think that it's the degree. And in this case, it's the degree because it's like, you didn't really hurt your foot. Let's be real. Let's just kidding. You didn't really hurt your foot.
She did. There's a bruise.
Okay. Which
she did not break it to 1,000 pieces. Is she drastically exaggerating what happened? Absolutely.
I'm not maintaining she's even hurt. Like I'm sorry. Watch back the tape again. She barely gets touched in that fight and immediately crumples to the ground like she's been shot. Like
sure, but she's a drama queen. Leave her alone.
And I think with also
humor her a little bit. It'll be fine. Like I don't know why we have to like attack somebody for saying, "Hey, I want a little bit of attention right now."
Everyone deserves a little. But no, I think it's also...
All of these women are attention starved, and you know this because they're on reality television.
That's fair. But I think especially like with the stuff earlier in the episode about like bringing up the Marisol boyfriend stuff, I don't think Alexia thinks that she's doing it from a good place. I think she has a right to believe that in her head, Adriana was saying that to make it a low blow based off of their dynamic.
Sure, but I don't think that that's the case. I think that Adriana literally just doesn't think through what she's saying. But also, in fairness to myself, I also was the person that didn't think Alexia was making a low blow, bringing up the fact that the guy that Adriana was dating might be married. So maybe we're different, you know, maybe there's crossed wires in that regard in terms of like they're both misinterpreting each other's intentions. Who knows? Yeah, but also like she should have just scrolled to the bottom of the screen. There is a difference in that Alexia literally just didn't follow through on her research as opposed to an off-the-cuff conversation where an off-color metaphor, remark, whatever, didn't land the way that you wanted it to.
Yeah.
Again, it was an accident. The damage was still done, but that like an accident is a different situation than something done with intention.
And I do feel there was kind of a look of Adriana's face of like, oh shit, I shouldn't have said that.
Clearly she understands after the fact, like that wasn't the right thing to say, but I get why she went there because that's going to elicit the most compassion from Alexia because that is where her heart is.
Sure. But we get the big to be continued and based off of like Alexia is like, if we thought she was, you know, aggressive before and willing to rip someone's head off before, I think it's going to be bad. But other than that, really good episode of Miami, I thought overall.
100%.
Never, you know, they really got the formula down and they're doing big things. And I'm excited to see the rest of the conclusion of this season. But we are going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, it is episode 2 of Vanderpump Rules. Don't go anywhere.
Well, hello, friends. I'm your pal in the mainstream media.
And I'm the Riz.
And, you know, Riz, it takes years of strenuous, dedicated training before you're worthy to step inside a professional wrestling ring. But it takes even more time to develop complex, highly astute opinions about professional wrestling. Am I right?
That is correct. And you know where we can find that?
Yes.
On the Wrestling Mayhem.
That's right.
Sidekick Media Services. We are your sidekick in business for social media, video production, and more. Find out more at sidekickmediaservices.com.
Welcome back to A Gay His Enby. We're getting into our last section here with Vanderpump Rules.
Another really good. This season, they've got their groove back, I think.
Oh yeah, completely.
I really have enjoyed the little we've had so far of this season, and you know, it's apparently going to get even better in terms of like, especially even like the teaser for next week's episode, like. The gloves start to eventually come off and like things are really going to get intense between everyone. But we start things off with going over to Schwartz and Sandy's as they're getting ready for the Daily Mail party and sort of making the finalized touches on the decor. And they have to actually get people to do the event, like bartenders and waiters and stuff like that. So they're doing an interview process with themselves and then their managing partner, Greg. The interview process for first note the fact that this waitress that they get is Daisy, but she spells it Daisye. Like, guys, can we get something together in terms of names and like not adding random letters to the end of people's names? It's a pet peeve of mine that I know is really superficial.
And I mean, I don't really feel like I have any leg to stand on. I picked probably the most pretentious name I could have when I was renaming myself.
But you spelled it properly at the end of the day.
I mean, that's fair.
But and Schwartz is kind of like being Schwartz and sort of picking people more on personality than actual like resume or skill and ability.
Which, I mean, I get that. I mean,
you got to have a balance in that environment.
But also look where they came from. Like,
sure.
That's how Sir is staffed. That's how Pump was staffed. That's how Tom was staffed. So, I mean, I guess with that background, you would probably use that as your groundwork, as your framework.
I'm sure they're just like, Greg, I know like you're a businessman, but like we got to cast for a new season of a reality show. So
I don't know that that's necessarily what was in front.
I think that's the conversation in the background that we. But
I don't know that they realize that is why Sir is staffed the way that it's staffed.
Sure.
I think that they look at Sir and go, oh, well, this is a lot of big personalities, and we really like had personal connections with these people, and it was a family, and that's kind of what we want to be here, and so that's kind of what we're going to staff like, as opposed to going, which I know was in Lisa Vanderpump's mind when she's staffing for Sir, is who is going to show up well on camera.
Yeah.
Because that woman is a businesswoman. And at the end of the day, she knows what she's doing.
Yeah, that's fair. And then we go to Peter and Raquel going on their sort of date. This freaking date. Oh my God. So immediately they're not vibing from the jump. Like, Peter's, I think, trying a little harder and thinks there's more of a vibe than Raquel definitely does. Raquel is not like...
Seeing Peter try this hard is weird.
It's so... You were saying, like, he's usually just a fuckboy. Why is he trying to, like...
Well, I mean, I get it. Like, he's at a certain point in his life where you kind of gotta shit or get off the pot as far as
he's probably older
down.
than Jax, and Jax waited way too fucking long.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, even then, there's like an awkward age difference between him and Raquel, I feel like. But it's awkward. It's real awkward, and I'm not a fan.
So they're talking about that because Raquel just finished doing because she's done pageants in the past that we've seen before in the show, but that she and she didn't place the best in this one, but it's her last pageant she can do because she's aged out of it. Because, in her words, Donald Trump set the rules of what the age limit is, which is another thing we can complain with Donald Trump about on a multitude of things. Another top being that he made Raquel cry because she then starts bawling on this dinner date, and the look on Peter's face is just like, what do I do? Like, what do I do? Like, it was just
odd. Out of nowhere, just like burst into tears in the middle of this restaurant. And it's like, what is going on?
And when she explained it, I get it. She feels like, all this time she spent with James, like she hasn't been able to sort of be independent of herself as a person at the end of the day. Like, it's not
Right.
just simply in a relationship. It's like she doesn't have the sort of financial support system. She doesn't have the, like, you know, education background and the sort of like job background, and she doesn't know what she wants.
She's got a degree.
Oh, she does have a degree. You're right.
She's just never used it.
But
because-
she doesn't know what she wants to do with her life at the end of the day. And I get that. I've had those feelings too. It's just very odd that this came up in the middle of this date and she just started bawling and crying.
Yeah.
And Peter tries to comfort her the best he can, but it's, yeah. We then move on to Lala and Katie going to get spray tans.
And then Lala spends the whole time complimenting Katie's tits and ass.
Yeah, and like Katie was, I felt bad for Katie being like, that's the first time in a long time I've had like someone compliment my, you know,
And it's like,
features. Which,
wow,
like,
Schwartz.
good job, Schwartz. This whole, like, as they detail more about like everything that's gone on between him and Katie, it's just like, wow, good job, Schwartz. You really did it. Like, and then you know, Lala's texting with the guy that she met at James's hotel event that she met up with, and she's still taking the stuff with Randall to heart and all that stuff, and she's worried about her sobriety and whether she can maintain it, and she's just really focused on she's like, that's my end focus at the end of the day. I have to put everything to the back burner because I have a child and I have to stay sober, and she cries a little bit about it and smudges her spray tan, which was funny. But at the end of the day, I do feel for Lala, and we get more into Lala also later. I think that's the next scene. Actually, we go to Lisa's house. We go to Villa Rosa. Feels like forever since we've been to Villa Rosa.
Oh yeah.
And Lala comes by, and they sort of get to chatting at Lisa's kitchen, and somehow Lisa found out that her and James had fucked. That Lala and James had fucked because that was brought up last episode.
Again,
by the way.
not just the first time, but because it was at one point Lisa had asked her previously in previous seasons if they had slept together, and she had said just the once, and it apparently has now come out. It happened again after her and Randall were together, and after James and Raquel were together.
Yeah, so. I love that Lisa just has all the
tea.
It's just like,
she's a Brit. Of course she's got the tea.
You were my former employee and all that stuff, but I'm just gonna be like, hey, who'd you fuck? Like,
I mean, she was doing it when they were actually employees, so
that's fair. But then they sort of get into this conversation about the Randall stuff and how Lala's dealing with everything, and they kind of get into Lisa starts asking did you really not see any signs in terms of everything that was with everything with the LA Times article and all that stuff, and Lala's breaking down and being like you think
understandably defensive. I can understand because people have been coming at her a lot. You should have known. How did you not know this?
But defensive, but also confiding in don't you I'm going through all the moments in my head thinking about did I miss this stuff? Did I could I have paid more attention in this regard? And she's upset and crying.
Yeah, but I really felt in that moment she was kind of yelling at Lisa a little bit because Lisa was like, "Now hold on, that's not what I meant."
Yeah, Lisa.
I just meant have you looked back and seen the evidence that you missed.
Yeah, and Lisa can be sometimes intense in her approach, and I think
she's a Brit.
Yeah, but I think her point too was there was also a dynamic sort of around things of we felt like we couldn't talk about Randall and
Yep.
I think Sandoval hit on it at the reunion, which was you can't really get on us of why didn't you tell me anything about all this stuff that you've been hearing about Randall? It's if you don't have an environment with us in which we think we can confidently confide in you about this stuff because that's your man and we have to, lay off your man, etc. We're not going to say that stuff at the end of the day.
I can understand her putting that boundary in place to begin with, but I can also understand everybody else's frustration of, but you're now yelling at us because we didn't cross your boundary.
Right. And I get that Lala's I was in my mid-20s. I thought I had somebody who loved me unconditionally. I get that. I think Lisa, though, like she said in her confessional, like when someone's waving a red flag, they're doing you a favor. I'd like that. Like, just like,
That was a good line.
like, you know, just be more observant at the end of the day. And I think that's a valuable lesson to anyone.
Right.
Like, it's an important lesson. But then Lala also talks about some of like the more like stuff that she's finding out now, and about how like because one of the big questions was like Randall was obviously married when the time him and Lala got together, and that had been brought up in like when Lala first came on the show. But like Lala claims that Randall was basically like, I will take you to my therapist, who I've had couples therapy with my wife with, and my therapist will tell you that you know everything, and that the therapist, and that he actually did, and the therapist told her essentially like she couldn't take a hint in terms of it. He had basically told her it's over forever, and she had been hanging on and not accepting it, etc.
Right.
And so that allowed Lala to believe that, you know, Randall was telling the truth.
And then come to find out, now Lala has a relationship with Randall's ex-wife, and Randall and the ex-wife had gone to this person for couples counseling before they broke up, and was literally the reason that they broke up.
Yeah.
Like we were very confused at first when we were hearing that, and had to rewatch that scene a few times to really get what she was saying. But it seemed like she was saying that this therapist wasn't really a therapist, and that she was a plant from Randall.
Yeah, like an actress or something. Like that was like,
Or someone he was fucking on the side.
yeah.
Or both, you know, because
Yeah.
he's apparently doing that casting couch thing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's all really blurry, but I think that was like a big bit of tea. And also Lala says that basically like he got with a new girl like 2 days after Lala moved out.
Yeah.
So it was like real quick like transition for him, and it's just like he's a scumbag at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad we can finally sort of like say it. And then we go to Raquel's new studio apartment because Sheena and Ariana are coming over. I understand studio apartments are one thing, and I think like, you know, obviously, you know, with the economy that we're in, I'm not picky. I hate an open bedroom.
That's what a studio apartment is.
Well,
though,
yeah. Her bed was like so close to her kitchen that it was like, I get weird vibes from that. Like,
Yeah.
I just, other than that, look great. And, you know, she's trying to find her own way and have her own place and sort of support herself.
And
on
I
her
get
own.
it. LA is not cheap.
Yeah, that's probably like a $2,000 apartment. Like at the end of the day, they're talking with Raquel about how Peter probably thinks there's more possible in this relationship than Raquel does, and they're like, you kind of have to set a boundary with him. She also didn't understand what the word boundary was. Oh, didn't she say like Sandoval had to explain to her what a boundary is?
I don't remember that, but
It was like in one of
also
her
if
confessionals.
you're looking to Sandoval to explain something to you, maybe check your source.
Yeah, but I mean, but Raquel was also the master of like not understanding words this episode, because she later like says that Peter had like consolidated her when she meant console. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, oh God, Raquel.
Oh no, she meant he got her together.
Yeah. And then there's also we hear this discussion that like also Raquel's keeping the dog in the relationship with James,
And like not letting him see the dog.
which there was a lot of discussion like these first two episodes about like dogs as if they're children.
They
Like,
are.
well, yes, but like because Tom and Katie are also essentially doing like custody exchanges with the dogs, and it's like, I think make up your mind at the end of like
I am fine because the dogs like have emotional connections to these humans, and like they're not involved in this dispute. Like they shouldn't be hurt for this. And like the best way to do, and also taking someone's pet away on top of also taking away, you know, someone that they're in a relationship with, that's just an extra layer of cruelty, I think. Like I get that there's like something you've got to do because there's a living animal here, like you've got to do something. But like I think where a relationship can be maintained with both people, but also just don't have pets with people that you're not married to.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I get the Katie and Schwartz thing, but like I don't. But she also had that dog before her and James got together.
Yeah. That's where it's like,
Yeah, I get why she has full custody then. It's not a child, but it is a child, but it's not a child.
She also said at one point when they're talking about the Peter stuff that like Raquel, because they were talking about how they saw them making out at SUR or whatever, and she basically was like, I don't have a real inclination to make out with Peter when I'm sober, and everyone's like, that's a sign.
That is a clear indication
that you should not be with this man. And then so they're getting ready for the Daily Mail party at Schwartz and Sandy's. We'll get into it later too. Like, there's all this discussion from Schwartz about how like the bar was what ended his marriage, and that they put too much time into the bar, and that's what separated. That's not what ended your marriage. I'm sorry.
it was the final straw.
Maybe.
And I can also understand how it looks that way to Schwartz, who does not dig down past the surface level of any emotion. So
Yeah.
like I get why he thinks that it was the bar's fault, but it was not the bar's fault.
Yeah. And then this scene. We go to lunch with James and Allie. Allie being James's new girlfriend. And like James is just like, he cannot put on a face to save his life and
At all.
Like he, according to him, he's so over Raquel, and he doesn't mind that she's dating Peter and is getting with his sweaty old dick or whatever he said. Like,
Ugh.
and he's so happy with Allie, and like it's just like it was really uncomfortable to watch. This was almost more uncomfortable.
Hairy, sweaty, old, saggy dick.
That's what it was. It's like, my God. More adjectives, please. But this lunch was almost more awkward than the Peter Raquel lunch. Like, in terms of Allie's just like, she's way too young, and this relationship is not a healthy dynamic just from the start in terms of like, and it's nothing on her part. It's just like,
number one, James is not ready.
no.
Number two, James has the emotional range of a teaspoon. And number three, he's a child. No, children are more emotionally mature than James is. But either way, he's immature. And he really needs to get a grip on himself and do some growing up. He needs a good year and a half of not putting his dick in anything.
Yeah.
And
also not putting his tongue in everything, as we saw when I have never been more disgusted watching a reality show and seeing Allie take a bite out of this burger and then have like a piece of like lettuce or something hanging out of her mouth, and James going in and biting the lettuce out to eat it.
This is not Lady of the Tramp. You are not cute. This is not spaghetti. Stop it.
I was like, oh no, like do not like that. I was so turned off by that in a very
did this in
visceral
public.
way.
Like it wasn't even in the privacy of your home. Like you did this in public while other people are trying to eat. Disgusting.
Yeah. So we go to Schwartz and Sandy's for the big Daily Mail party. James is DJing. He's DJing on toilet paper again, like the last time.
Jeez.
Which I thought was funny.
It was even the same brand.
Yeah. Gotta keep that
Quilted
synchronicity.
Northern.
And then, Lisa and Ken come, obviously, and they're admiring the place. Lisa's praising the decor, but also saying that it looked like they designed it on mushrooms, which...
Probably.
I mean, in fairness, this was it's one of those things where you sort of visualize everything and you're like, that's not supposed to work, but it does end up coming together in a way that's...
Yeah, they ordered fabric in every pattern imaginable, and even some that were not imaginable.
Yeah. So everyone's kind of conversing around and they're having a good time. And Lisa finds out from James that Peter and Raquel are hooking up.
And then promptly pulls Peter aside.
And is like, you can't do that. Like we're past the point. But also, like, she says in her confessional, like, we're in a different age right now, with the Me Too movement. This power dynamic stuff it's like, you needed the Me Too movement to learn that your managers shouldn't be sleeping with your waitresses?
Yeah.
Why? Like, that's my thing. Of just like, this was like, I get that we consider that time like an awakening, but like that's stuff you should have already known, Lisa.
She's very business minded. She's very by the books and by the rules sort of thing.
Right.
So she just doesn't care as long as it doesn't affect the bottom line. It doesn't affect the ability to do the job.
Yeah. That's fair.
And we've seen that from her in past seasons. Like, she doesn't care as long as the job's getting done.
Yeah, which I found it funny. So she has this conversation with Peter, basically advising Peter that he needs to sort of break this off, and then Raquel finally gets the courage to break it off with Peter. Like I think it was like 74 seconds after the conversation.
Literally, he like turns around and there's there's Raquel,
and Raquel's like, "Are you okay with that?" And Peter's like, "I'm fine with that." Like. And so they kind of go their separate ways in that regard. Well, and because Sheena was the one that was kind of encouraging Raquel to sort of break it off with Peter. I thought it was like Sheena, these last 2 episodes, it's kind of felt more like a background character more than anything.
It's so weird because she was literally the start of this whole show.
It may be, but I think her being that background, it's kind of why I've liked her these last 2 episodes. I normally, in the last couple seasons, have been like Sheena, she's cringy in that kind of reality way, but also like in terms of like actual person, she's very off-putting, I feel.
Yeah.
But like she's kind of just been like flowing in a way where it's like, I actually don't mind it. And she offers for Schwartz to come on to her podcast to sort of talk about the Katie stuff, which we'll see next episode, which
is probably going to be awful.
Yeah, probably a big mistake on Schwartz's part, but what's new? Then we get also Greg, the property manager, sort of like liaison person for Schwartz and Sandy's, is talking with Lisa and kind of being like, Lisa, they're running me fucking ragged. like I did not think I would have to deal like with these kind of like. And Lisa's like, yeah, I had to deal with the same thing with Tom. Like,
yeah. And it's funny because we're seeing right now in the way that they are working on Schwartz and Sandy's kind of what Ariana and Katie have been saying of late when they're talking about their sandwich shop that they're starting.
Yes.
And that they're going, we're just not going to do it that way.
Yeah.
And like passively criticizing the way that the Toms have really kind of managed both of these shops opening or restaurants opening. And they're like, no, we're gonna not do any aesthetics or anything before we have every contract drawn, before we have our business plan in place, before we have everything else done and squared away. We're not even going to look at things that actually cost money.
Right. Yeah. And I can understand when you're somebody who's done it for a long time and has opened these restaurants for a long time, that it could be kind of mind-numbing to deal with, like more personalities in that regard.
Yeah.
And then Tom and Katie sort of like, get together and like Katie compliments Tom on the place, and like, but it's also awkward just in the sense of like, I think Katie at one point was like, was it worth it? Like in terms of our marriage and stuff like that. And like Katie like is just like, you never put me first in terms of anything. It's not just the bar. Like it's like
the bar is just what you focused on instead of your wife. That is not the problem. The problem was you weren't focusing on your wife.
Yeah. That's the core at the end of the day. And so they're kind of left in this weird kind of awkward place at the end of the episode, but which apparently is going to get much worse next week. So,
oh yeah,
that'll be exciting to see. But that was Vanderpump Rules for this week. Again, I think they're firing all cylinders in terms of what they're bringing out.
Completely agree. There's good ebb and flow to the flow of the episode, and it's like you said, firing on all cylinders. Before we get into our tops and bottoms of the week, I do want to mention that as of this podcast release on this Friday, Jen Shaw of Salt Lake City will be going into custody to serve her 6.5-year sentence on her fraud charges. I believe it's going to be in Houston, Texas is where she's serving her sentence. At least that's where she's starting. She might get transferred at some point, but that's where she's starting.
I saw she got matching tattoos or whatever with her son before going, which, I feel for her sons and her family, but it's like, I think we're at the point where
I feel for her sons.
Yeah. Well,
at this point, I believe her husband was complicit.
Sure.
I believe he was involved, and she took the fall so that he could stay making money and take care of the kids.
Yeah, I think that's a viable theory. I just think At the end of the day, like, and she still hasn't. I mean, I don't know the people who gave her email address if they have secret information that the public don't know. But she still hasn't given her full story and her full truth.
I'm sure it will drop tomorrow on the 17th when she goes into prison.
I heard there was like a rumor that she's doing a what's the name of that famous like podcast that's been doing like this famous podcast. She interviewed like Julia Fox in like an interview.
Mm-hmm.
She recently interviewed Adam Levine about the whole Maroon 5, like him sending those DMs to that girl stuff.
Oh, right.
I forgot. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but like there's rumors that she's got a sit down with Jen Shaw. I don't know.
Huh.
I don't know if I'm interested at the end of the day because I don't know if I would necessarily believe anything Jen says anymore. It's like, you know, she'll serve her time. Hopefully, you know, the victims can get some sort of like, you know, reciprocity in terms of everything they've been through. It's just, yeah. It's not I'm not going to be clamoring like I know a lot of people were when Teresa went to jail about like all the inner goings of like everything that she's having to deal with. Cause it's like, and also 6.5 years, it's like, they're not going to put Salt Lake City on pause for that long, obviously. So I feel like the show's going to move on without her.
Yeah, I am, for one, looking forward to forgetting that Jen Shaw exists.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, like it was a journey when it was, you know, in the beginning, but it's just like.
And apparently, I'm looking forward to Mary getting back onto Salt Lake City next season.
Just slot
another problematic person in. We can tend to do that on this show.
I mean, yeah, Salt Lake's got plenty, but no, obviously sad for her kids, but you know. Bye.
Bye.
But let's get into our tops and bottoms of the week and cross everything that we've been watching. What are yours, babe?
I think that my bottom definitely has to be whoever decided to edit the Daytona Win challenge that way.
Yeah, the Drag Race editors should have been lip syncing.
Like, literally, they should have been like, I'm sorry, you people back there, come out here, lip sync. One of you is getting fired at the end of this. How about write a good acting challenge for RuPaul's Drag Race? Let's do that challenge.
Do that challenge.
I think my top of the week, I'm probably going to say Teresa.
Oh, okay.
She's really, I'm, as much as I don't agree with her in like things from the past, I really do think that she is trying to move forward and trying to be a better version of herself. I think a lot of that is due to Louis and his influence. But at the end of the day, it's her work that she's putting in. And I think that when someone puts in effort like that, you have to recognize and celebrate that.
We didn't talk about her and Louis on Watch What Happens Live, but she seems so much like calmer.
Oh yeah,
and like even
despite having that awful jumpsuit that she was wearing.
Stop it, Teresa. Stop it with the jumpsuits. Like, you're a beautiful girl. Stop. Like, but she seemed even with like the Joe stuff, like just kind of like resound with it. Like, I wish them the best, but like, you know, and you know, maybe that's the healing of it all. So my tops and bottoms for this week, I'm going to give my top to Kiki over in Miami. I thought Kiki was an underrated star this episode. I want more of Kiki, even if it's not upgrading her next season to like full-time housewife. Like, I want more of her backstory. I want to know about her origins and where she's come from and sort of that journey. I mean, she was giving us Peeing on the Beach. She was giving us Oscar acting performances. Like, she was like, she had the jokes. She had the confessional lines. Like, I think with Miami, with having like the way the Friends of and the main cast is structured, you can slot people in and out pretty easily. And I would love her to be slotted into a full-time housewife next season.
I would love for her to just pointedly order a mojito.
Yes.
At some point. It's just like, or just do it repeatedly. Just like, can I have a mojito, please? And then just leave it at that. It'd be really funny, and it'd be a good montage to show at the end of the season.
Yeah. And my bottom for this week, I won't go into too much detail because I don't want to churn anything in my stomach, but James Kennedy for that whole burger scene. Disgusting. It was terrible. I've never been so reviled in my life. It was I have nightmares because of that. Thank you, James. That is somehow the worst thing you've done on this show.
And it's not like it's a short list that he's having to contend with. He's got a laundry list of awful things he's done on this show, and that is at the top of the list.
Congrats, James. You're my bottom for the week.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week on A Gay and His Enby. Tune in next week for more of our recaps and hot takes. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you're listening, and check us out on our social media at A Gay and His Enby on all the platforms. A special shout out to Shane Ivers, who wrote Pulsar, the song we're using for our theme. For my husband Eamon, I'm Merlin, and we're out.
This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.